yeah, that's a big problem, I think, for a lot of really small organisations. You set up an organisation, you just make a bank account in your name. That's if you want to get funded, if that's where you want to go down, you're not going to be able to do that. Now that might be kind of basic stuff for some of you here, but for a lot of people it isn't, and that was a prime example. So we went really hard on that, and because the person hadn't read the guidance, the application didn't even get read. So yeah, I would say every application you apply for, always read through the criteria, but there's some really basic stuff, governance stuff, if you have it in place, then it'll make the whole process easier every time you go to apply. So yeah, we've got the different types of organisations there, registered charities, not-for-profits. You can, as I said, be unincorporated and apply for awards for all, so you don't have to be a registered charity. So yeah, I mentioned organisations' accounts. Yeah, so also they don't. So if you're kind of unincorporated, you won't have to submit your accounts to anybody, so you wouldn't have to submit them to the charity commission. So it would just be good to obviously keep a record and have access to bank statements so you can keep a record of what your incomings and outgoings are. I would recommend it, yeah. I'd probably say it's for the best. Yeah, in terms of bank statements, so most funders at some point, whether when you apply or when you are successful, they're going to want to see your bank statement. So yeah, making sure you've got easy access to that, whether it's online banking, that usually helps if you've got that on your phone, so you can get access to that.
Sorry, can I just ask about if your organisation is less than 15 months old? So if you're like literally right at the beginning of the journey, how they will still look at you, but how far in? It's not like, is it not worth doing it if you've only been running 3 months, 6 months, or?
So I'm not sure what the exact
Can I answer that? Yeah, you have to then supply your introduction letter and your bank account. Welcoming letter, that's what you need to submit. So you don't have accounts or bank statements, that's what you can offer instead.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know that. That's good. So yeah, some funders want 3 years of accounts, and yeah, I think the main thing to say for awards for all, in my experience, they want to give you the money. They really want to give you the money. I think it's a grassroots organisation that they put blockers for themselves. Most other funders, not most, but a lot of other funders, they put a lot of barriers in place to getting funders. Awards for all, they actually want to give money to organisations. It's a great fund. You get up to £10,000 to start off your project.
So just on that note, if your incorporation, say, is less than 15 months old, but you have funding from a year before, is that like, and obviously documentation, is that?
Was that with the same organisation though?
No, well, I've moved from a sole trader to a CIC.
I'm not too sure. I mean, I'm going to show you on the next slide. I mean, I don't work there, I don't have all this information off the top of my head. I would always say just call them and speak to them. That's because you're going to avoid a lot of kind of uncertainty. Just speak to them. They're usually quite helpful. So you can see we'll not be able to assess your application if you do not have a bank account, bank statement that meet our requirement. And unfortunately that was the case with the person that was helping. Yeah, due diligence and governance is really important. Next slide, please. Yeah, so yeah, you can see what the bank statement needs to show, all the basic stuff, and yeah, I've put the number there because I think everyone's got a lot of questions. You need to speak to them and find out exactly the answer to your question so there's no uncertainty. Okay?
Right.
Yeah. Cool, so in terms of the application form, this is where it gets a bit more interesting. So I'm supporting a lot of groups with applying for awards for all at the moment. The rest of the answers are all pretty basic stuff in terms of like, that's all organisational info. The 3 main, I don't know if any of you have looked at awards for all, but there's 3 main questions. And for me, I think the questions are really good. I think a lot of funding applications, they re-ask the same question lots of times in lots of different ways. Actually, with awards for all, they really break it down in terms of what would you like to do, and the other 2 questions as well. So what I always recommend to people who I'm working with, they've given you 7 bullet points. Now, common sense says answer the 7 bullet points. Don't just start writing your answer, what would you like to do? Actually answer the bullet points, whether you want to divide them up between the 300 words. But I always say to every group that I'm working with, actually answer the questions bullet point by bullet point, and then you're going to cover every single point that they'd like to do. So my background is sport. What would you like to do? You'd like to deliver a football project at this time, at this venue, to this age group. What difference will your project make? The project will provide a free space for young people to play football at. Who will benefit from it? We've already spoken about that. Young people aged so and so, 11 to 19. How long would you expect it to run for? So this can be an estimate, but if you're doing a funding application and you're actually working out your budget, you're going to know how many weeks it can run for. So you can actually put in there the project is going to run for 20 weeks, 30 weeks, whatever the budget will allow for. How you'll make sure people know about it. So if you're an existing organisation, have you got a membership base or clients you can already tell? If not, are you going to speak to schools? Are you going to speak to youth clubs? Are you going to go to older people groups? I don't know who you guys' membership base are. How do you recruit people? We need to speak about that. How you plan to learn from it, use this learning to shape future projects. So, for example, are you going to get feedback from the participants? Are you going to trial different methods and then scale it up later on down the line? Is it something new? So I think this is really, really good. And if you've got a lot of experience around funding, then you know a lot of funders don't fund existing projects. Unfortunately, I think it's a big problem, but they're actually willing to fund something that has worked well. So if you're doing, I don't know, a summer program or an Easter program and it's gone really well, and now you want to scale it up and run it once a week, then they're going to actually allow you to do that. That's actually saying we're going to allow you to fund both types of projects. Cool. So yeah, and I'd always recommend maximising the word count. I get people sending me answers 150 words. You've got 7 bullet points there. That's a lot of information. You should be maximising the word count. Obviously, check your spelling, grammar, send it to people, get them to read over it, so you get feedback on it. Next one, please. Okay, so how does your project meet our funding priorities? If your project doesn't meet these funding priorities, you probably shouldn't be applying. But I imagine most community projects can meet one of these outcomes. I think from my background in sport, I support sports organisations, and a lot of sports organisations wouldn't think to apply for Awards for All because we talk about regular participation in sport and whatnot, but actually sport can help with all these outcomes, and I've had to do a lot of work with sports organisations to show them how their work actually meets these outcomes. So yeah, what I would do is when you're doing this answer, I would number it, number 1, number 2, whatever outcome it is, make it clear, put number 1 and then explain how you're going to actually meet that outcome. I feel like a lot of projects will build strong relationships across communities. Many projects will improve places and spaces, and most projects should help more people to reach their potential. So if you're kind of on the ball, you can make it so your project hits all these outcomes, and obviously the more outcomes you hit, the better your application is going to be. And again, it's not a lot of words to be honest. This one is 150 words. So yeah, depending on how if you don't think that if you think that you're stronger on one outcome, maybe just target that and really go for it, as opposed to kind of watering down the answer for multiple questions. Yeah, next one. Yeah, so the next one, another very simple question: how does your project involve your community? And then they're actually telling you what do we mean by community. So there are people living in the same area, people have similar interests or life experience but not live in the same area. Schools they're talking about. So they actually I think the problem is a lot of big organisations drop down into areas, do projects, and there's no actual local involvement, and they don't want to see that. That's why this fund really is for small grassroots organisations. They're actually asking, how do you know there's a need for this? If you don't actually know there's a need for it, then you need to question yourself and say, why am I applying for this funding? I actually need to go out and get evidence that there is a need for this. is it just me that wants to do this, or is it actually people in the community? And how do I know this? So they're giving you all the answers. They're actually telling you the answers to put. They're telling you what to go and do. Like they're spoon feeding you. Couldn't make it easier. So talking to regular chats. If you're running a community organisation, you should be doing this all the time anyway. You should be speaking to people in your community all the time, in person or on social media. But I'd say it's better in person. Surveys, steering groups, open days. You may want to look at data as well for this, but I wouldn't go too heavy on the data. I'd use a few statistics. I wouldn't go too heavy. What they're kind of telling you is they want word of mouth. That's what they're speaking about. Okay, so they're giving you the answers. Yeah. And if you are embedded within your community, then you'll know what it is, and you'll be able to say, this is why we need this project. We've run it before, or this session stopped. There's a gap in provision, and we need to carry this one to restart it. Okay. Again, 200 words, so it's not really a lot of words, but again, maximise the word count all the time. Next one.
Can I ask, will they accept, I don't know, a joint or partnership application for this? I'm thinking, for example, you've got someone providing a particular type of service, like a sports or an arts provider, but you're working with a community-based organisation who are more general, who are funding for someone else to deliver, someone with expertise to deliver a project. Would that be something you could apply for?
So you would be delivering it in their community centre? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just thinking from, we're a community-based organisation, but we're quite general, so we might say, we could do we've identified a need in the community for, I don't know, a kids football camp.
Yeah.
But we don't have the expertise to do it, but we could get somebody who has got that expertise to do it. How would we do the application for this?
Yeah, again, I would speak to them, but I imagine it would be you apply for the funding, and then within the budget you would say we're going to pay the coaching company,
somebody else.
We're going to pay the coaching company this amount an hour to deliver the programme. That's what I would imagine it would be from my previous experience. Yeah.
Cool. Can I just, is it okay to park questions to the next bit, because I've allocated time for questions. And also because I want the panel to be able to answer some of them as well, because we've brought people in from who have actually had funding, so I want you to get full breadth of them. Cool. So we're moving on now to reaching communities. You've probably had an awards for all. You've gone to Kieran, you've probably got some help, and now you're like, yay! I'm ready for reaching communities. I'm ready to have over £10,000, and there's going to be at least 2 stages. So you do a very basic form to begin with, and you're lulled into this false sense of security, and then what happens is that then goes to a particular person, and they look it over and they ask some questions, and it goes to a panel, they ask some questions, and what then ensues is this backwards and forwards, where like they ask more questions, you answer them. Yeah, Joseph knows this. And you have to keep answering lots of questions. So I've put at least 2 stages, but that will just depend on how well you answer the questions, and whether the panel, like you've answered a whole heap of questions, and then they'll ask something about something completely different. You're like, why is that? It's because it's a panel. Okay. Number of years up to 5, deadline ongoing, and the turnaround, like I said, they progress. You progress that you hear back on progress within 12 weeks, but actually we can hear from the panel later on about how long it actually took them. So, you need to bear that in mind. Cool. Next slide, please. Cool. So, DEEP is something that Leanne spoke about. I'm the other fundraising development manager for Cold Spots at one of our other events. When thinking about any application, you might want to think deeply before going for it. So you think about the deadline, think about whether you're eligible, just as Kieran was saying. You think about whether there's any exclusions, and then you think about the project fit. So if you can ping again, it will come up. So in this particular one, there's no deadline, but just make sure you've got time to deal with those second stage application questions that they ask you. Eligibility, we're now going to go on to, so we're going to go and look at this, we're going to explore the E of eligibility. Ping. Thank you. So I've taken this up from the website, and I'm going to skim through quite a lot of this, because as I said, on the 7th of June, they're going to be changing some stuff, they're going to be bringing out their new strategy. So I suspect a lot of this will stay the same, and Kieran's covered quite a lot of the sort of things that are covered, similar, like there's some similarities with the rules for all. Ping. If you're unincorporated, it's got some advice. Speed calming, we're going to ping through these, Morgan. Keep that finger at the ready. Morgan? Yeah, thank you. They have stuff you can't accept applications from. So really read this properly when you do come to apply. Ping. And similar to awards for all the not related committee members. Ping, please. And exactly what Kieran was saying, and something that was backed up when I spoke to Katie the other day, she's the person who deals with our area, that she said, no question is a silly question, and so do check the website, don't just phone them up immediately, do check what they say first with any funder. But then if you really can't, if you're still not sure whether you can apply or not, before even putting pen to paper, do contact them, because otherwise you don't want to waste a whole heap of time starting an application and you're not even eligible, okay? So that's eligibility and exclusions. Ping. Cool. We're on to we've done the D and the E and E, and we're on to the P, the project fit. So again, this is similar to what Kieran was just talking about. There's particular things that they're looking for. They want communities, it's reaching communities, so they want communities to thrive. It's all in the title here. They want to build strong relationships in and across communities, improve the places and spaces that matter to communities, help more people to reach their potential by supporting them at the earliest possible stage. So I was speaking something about prevention earlier. Okay, next one please. So again on the project fit, and there's a few different parts to this. So we're looking for projects that are people-led, strengths-based and connected. Next one please. And involving people and communities from the start. So it's not like I've got a passion for snail racing. I think that's really going to help people with their mental health. I want to do that. I'm going to force everybody here to do snail racing. It should come from you guys. You want to do snail racing? Okay.
We do horse race instead.
Horse race? No. That brings up other issues. Right, okay, next please. And then, like Kieran said, they're kind of giving you some of the answers. So dig in to, with any application you do, dig into any information they're giving you, because it'll give you extra bits. And it's not just you talking about yourself, it's you matching yourself with what they want, yeah? So it's like a conversation with somebody. If it's all like, oh, Barbara, I'd like to tell you all about myself, and me. You know, you want to find out, I want to find out that Barbara's interested. Oh, Barbara's interested in snail racing. Now let's have a conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like, but if she's not interested in snail racing, what are you interested in, Barbara? Photography. So then, just you kind of match it to, I would match my conversation, just as you would in a relationship, yeah? Cool, next one please. Yep, and they want you to be connected to your community. Some other bits to fit with project fit that you want to try and draw out, their EDI stuff and their environmental stuff. Project fit is also under, so sorry, I should have said, these different parts, the apply, who can apply, they're different tabs. So you click into them and you get different parts of it, okay? So just have a real explore on there to make sure you're covering all of it. And like Kieran said, we like these guys because they do things like direct costs and core costs, which is the normal panic that you have about not doing it to get core costs. Next please. See, that's because I love it. That's my little.
Did you just put it there? Did you just put it there for a reason?
No, to remind myself to say. Like, say if you've got 3 funders, and you've got your ongoing work to do, and then you've got sort of special exciting projects to do. I would go for the ongoing stuff with the lottery, because the exciting stuff, somebody like the co-op fund might be happy to support, because they want to support a minibus or a thing that they can slap their name on, or a business sort of thing where they want some credit for it. Lottery do want credit for it as well, but they're prepared to pay for the boring stuff. So why wouldn't you, when you're thinking about who to go to for different things, just think like these guys, lottery will fund your boring stuff, and that frees up your other people to deal with the other bits that are maybe the nice to haves. Yeah, so sort of weigh up who to go to for different things.
So it's actually the same sort of project that you mean that
Oh no.
Need like what you call joint funding, right? So there's so much funding.
Yeah.
And that will then actually like 50% will come from lottery, 20% from co-op, and 10%.
It may well do, yeah. Different funders have different rules on that as well, so check out what they say. So some want to be kind of the main attraction. They might want it, to be able to say, oh, we did all this. And others kind of want to encourage you to be sustainable. Like Garfield Western will sort of say, what's your breakdown? It's different areas, not just trust, but different types of fundraising. Anyway, we're not even doing questions now. Divert how to apply. Oh, this is exciting. 2 ways. Oh, next please. Oh, no, sorry. I went wrong. I've got to tell you this. So, you can apply using a video, or you can do writing. Yeah, I know. And then, so when I was speaking to Katie the other day, Leanne came up with a good question for her. What if you want to do it in your own language? So apparently you can also do it in your, say if English isn't your first language, it would be difficult for you to communicate in that way. You can do it in a different language. Who knew? And you can do it in BSL as well if you can say more than thank you. Right. What would you like to do? So this is the how to apply bit of it. I'm not going to go through every question, obviously, because I've got teeny tiny over time now already. What would you like us to do? But exactly what Kieran was saying, like he said, oh, I think you would normally go through the bullet points. This is exactly what Katie said to do. Use these as your guide. And that's true of a lot of applications as well. When they give you extra information or where they break down a question more, what you're trying to do is do that match thing of they're asking for that, you're showing them that you're completely understanding what they're asking and you're answering it. So to do that, you kind of signpost and you structure your answer in the same way. What would you like to do? We would like to do da-da-da-da. It will benefit da-da-da-da. The difference it will make will be, do you see what I mean? It's very clear that you're. I know we don't like tick boxing. We like to think that we're too big for that. But let's play the game, okay? Right, next, please. Yes. So this is kind of, that's the official question. This is the Karen version. What would you like to do? What would you like to do that fits with what the funder wants? We're back to like, what would you like to do? I'd like to do snail racing. No snail racing. What would you like to do that fits with what the funder wants? Yeah? Photography. Maybe. Yeah. Too much fun we've had here. Morgan.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, and you just distracted. Yes, well done. I've just said that. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
And we're now going to hear a bit from Tom. Who's going to tell us how he answered this question? Stand wherever you like, Tom. Do a little dance.
I'm going to say, hello everyone, I'm Tom from the 999 Club. We're a homeless charity in Deptford. We're on a day centre there. It's open access for anyone who's either just at risk of homelessness or they're currently experiencing it. And we just got our Reaching Communities bid, which we're very happy with. And a bit like we said earlier, it's absolutely ages to put it in. And part of the specific thing we did, that when they came down to give us a check and say well done, they said it worked well, is how we talk to people who use our services. share a bit about how we did that. And it wasn't always that straightforward because we try to not have very long and ongoing relationships with people who use our services, because the idea is we will quickly help people find a new place to live, or if they're at risk of being homeless, help them stay in their current home, and then also we will help them to make their plan for going on that might involve them being active in their community or getting services or whatever, but not coming back to us. And so what the lawyer was saying here is they want you to have had really proper conversations with people. People come to us, maybe they're in a moment of crisis, you know, it would be typical someone's come back home, someone's changed the blocks, they just can't get in, they don't know what to do, they come to us. It's hardly the time to say, oh, if we were designing a 3-year lottery program, you know, what can you do for us? Obviously, that's not at all the thing to do. And then also, once people have got stuff sorted, and they don't really want to go back to that time in their lives. And so we did, and just to make it even harder, we had previously had a Reaching Communities fund, and the manager of the money had said, yeah, maybe you can reapply, but there's a lot of people in the issue who want the money, and we're going to have to see, you know, quite a compelling reason for you to get this here. They were basically saying to us, the bar's probably quite high here. Okay, fine. So we thought, rather than chasing the money, we try and start from what we're seeing. And one of the things we were seeing was there was a group of people who did keep coming back to the centre. And basically it would be something like, they're at risk of being homeless, you sort something out with the landlord, and then you say, look, here's a tenancy sustainment worker, here's a flow support worker, put you in with them, and then 4 months later, take you back. There was this group of people, and we thought, something's not going right here. Now, an interesting thing about that group was we could talk with them a bit more in between when things stabilised a little bit. So we just started talking to them, trying to understand what's the rhythm, what's the pattern of their life, how does it work. Quite open conversations. One of the good things we've got at 999 Club's got space. We might do food, we might do drink, so we could come down and just talk to people, share some food, have a drink, and listen to them. And they started saying about how they didn't feel like they could relate to the workers who were in theory meant to be helping them stay in their place. They were saying they just feel so distant to them. It felt like it's the system, it felt like it's being back in school, or it's the police, it's authority. They felt like there were different people to them, different background, different way of talking. They just weren't with them at all. And they kind of had that feeling. Do you ever speak to someone who smokes? And they say, no, I know I should quit, I know I should quit, I know I should quit. They had that kind of feeling about these workers. Yeah, I guess I should kind of talk to them. They obviously weren't going to. And an interesting thing as they started talking to each other in groups was they started sharing their stories with each other, and they started giving tips to each other. And I've noticed people love giving each other advice. It's much easier to give another person advice than it is to change things by yourself. But they were really listening to each other. And so we started saying, well, I wonder if this would work, where people would support each other. And so this is probably where we did a bit of a misstep, and one of the reasons it took a bit longer was, I then went away and went on to Google and started reading things. Oh, there's a few people who are doing stuff like this, and I was like phoning them up, oh, can I come to like research? And so I came up with this idea, we could do peers. was like, oh yeah, when you look at the thing, it says, well, how do you know the project that you're going to do is needed and wanted by the local community? I was like, right, me saying, well, they do a really interesting project in Haringey or whatever, that doesn't mean it's needed in the local community. So then, went back to people and said, what do you think about this idea? Kind of, fingers crossed, hope it goes well. They were all right about it, but actually they were quite critical of it. And what they said is, we've seen stuff like this before, and it's always done in a very exploitative way. So you have people who've got experience with a particular thing, in our case homelessness, call them peers, be a mentor, be a coach, be a worker, whatever it is. Says, and you don't give them any training, you don't pay them, you don't give them any support, you throw them in with other people who are going through tough times. You expect them to solve all these people's problems and it not to have any impact on them. And then you claim, as the organisation, claim credit for all of this stuff. And I was like, okay, fair point. And I think we probably all have seen something not dissimilar to that happen before. So, took a bit of a step back and we were like, well, what would you need, do you think, if I was advertising that as a role for you, what would sweeten the deal? And that was a good question. People started having lots of answers. Well, look, I wouldn't apply for it unless I had the whole list of things. And what was interesting was a lot of the things they were saying was the same things as what someone would want when they moved into their first home after having slept homeless or something like that. It's like, I'd want someone who could listen to me, whatever I wanted to talk about, and someone who understood me, and someone who wasn't judging me, and someone who was consistent, but also very compassionate with and kind, and someone who could link me in with other things when I wanted it. So if I decided I wanted to stop smoking, they could say, well, have we looked at A, B, and C, but they wouldn't be coming in and saying you should stop smoking. And so what we put into the bid was, we have peer coaches, we pay them, we train them, we give them a coach as well. Everyone's coaching everyone. And the people who've been through the programme would meet and they discuss it and they feedback on it and they'd say how to improve it and change it over the first few years. And so, interesting / annoyingly, when the elephant in the lorry came, when they finally came down to give us money, as they said, we did feel it was a bit risky because it's a new project for you. What you were saying before, they don't only fund new stuff, they can just fund what you do today. I was like, oh, that should have just gone for what we currently do. But they were like, but we could see that you've spent so much time working this up with the people who are going to take part, and we can see that people are going to be involved all the way through about how it's going to run, as well as the running of it. And then they said that was the thing that meant they thought, yeah, all right, we'll give the money. So it was that way of involving people and putting it on. And then the last thing I would say about just like an overarching thing of what I said about like involving people is, I think even the process of involving people, it can be quite exploitative the way it's done. And it can feel quite disorientating or annoying for people taking part. It's like you come in, you ask them their deepest, darkest secrets, their fears, their hopes, their dreams, and you just have to see you later. You just head off. And people are like, what the hell was that? And then a year later, there's a press release that someone's launching a project. And you don't even know about it. And I think if I'd done this all over, I would have done it less as like calling it focus groups or calling it meetings or calling it committees and all of that. And I think we would have done like parties, and we would have said, here's some nice food, come along, let's have a good time, let's celebrate whatever it might be, let's do Black History Month, let's do Vietnamese New Year. And then, as you do, you talk to people when you're at parties and write it down, because actually a lot of we weren't at all impressed by, like you're saying, that statistics of they wanted to hear quotes, they wanted to hear you talk to people, real stuff. And I think that's
do you like collect that storytelling? Because, you know, like you give somebody a questionnaire, I mean, I hate filling out questionnaires, and they're just like, and the people that I work with, they tell you, but it's like just collecting that, like, and put it as a...
We'll open it up to a panel, because that's a really good...
What I would very, very briefly say is, one of the cool things about working with Ocean is that there are so many creative people and creative organisations, and talking is not the only way of like communicating things, and there's loads of great people who do stuff with drawings, or with video, or with music, or stuff like that, or even voting in slots, or all the rest of it. And so I think if I was to do it all over again, it'd be something a bit more creative, probably.
We're going to have a Friday fundraising club social, and I'm going to have some different monitoring type stuff out. So it will mainly be a social, maybe be a party, funny enough. But I'll have sort of stuff on the wall that sort of just a little taster of like different evaluation things. And if anybody's got ideas for that, we can put into the mix and contact me. Right, ping. I've got to speed through. I'm going. Yeah, we can cover that in the panel. One thing. So these were Katie's other tips. She said, we're putting in the amount requested, it should be the full amount across the years. For example, if you're requesting 20k per year for 4 years, then you add it all up. No question is a simple question for the advice line, you can apply your own language. If you have feedback on the process, then you can give that to me and I can pass that to Katie. We're trying to meet it's not a set time, but we are trying to meet regularly. Yes, if you need further help, call them. If you want people to check over your applications for you, then fundraising development managers may be able to offer that. Don't leave it until like the day before, like a couple of weeks at least, if not more, especially over holiday seasons. Great. Okay, so you're allowed